After decades of elected justices of the peace with minimal training handling death investigations across the state, a recent vote in the Texas legislature could bring the state one step closer to a new system. This week on Inside the Investigation, senior investigative producer David Barrere explains the new challenges that could come with reform. David, welcome to Inside the Investigation. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. I know you've had a really busy week, a lot of sitting and listening to testimony and hearings that are happening in the Texas legislature. And you got to, and this is what we're discussing today, you got to actually sit in on testimony dealing with a bill that was sparked in large part by your reporting and your team's reporting. Tell us about how we got to this moment.
Right. So this follows a large investigation that we did. It was a group project looking at the Texas Justice of the Peace system and the medical examiner system. And those are what we have in place to investigate deaths that are unusual or unexpected.
And before we get into the rest of what we're going to talk about today, can you just explain what the system looks like now for when a person dies and it needs to be investigated?
Right. So what we have in Texas is like a two-tiered system. For the larger counties in the state, the counties with more people, we have medical examiners. There's not more than a few more than a dozen of those counties with a medical examiner system, and those are the larger counties. Those are staffed and headed by a medical doctor, a physician, certified forensic pathologist with years of experience in death investigation and autopsy. The second part of the system, which is what most counties have, because we have 254 counties, so the vast majority of them work under justices of the peace. And those are elected judges, and there's typically precincts in a county, or if it's a really sparsely populated county, there's just one. But the justice of the peace will be the one that goes out and makes a determination on the cause and manner of death. They have the option, they can determine if they feel a body needs to be sent for an autopsy, and it could go out to a medical examiner or a private autopsy service. But those justices of the peace are elected, and they have to be elected very minimal requirements. You have to be 18 years old, a citizen, a resident of Texas for a certain amount of time, but you don't have to have medical expertise or any sort of training in death investigations to get elected. Now, once they are elected, they do go through some days or a couple weeks of, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. There is some training, and then there's recurring training that's mandated each year. But obviously, it's far less than what a medical examiner goes through to be certified. So the other thing about justices of the peace to understand is that they are not just investigating deaths. So they oversee small claims court. They handle like low-level misdemeanor tickets. They do marriage ceremonies. And I think, because we worked on a separate project, they do truancy cases too in some instances.
And so the piece that aired earlier this week dives into this, and we get to see what lawmakers think about this matter. Let's watch that story.
An update now from the Capitol on a bill filed after our team's reporting on the state's antiquated death investigation system. Today, most of the 254 counties in Texas utilize elected justices of the peace who have scant training and often lack medical expertise to conduct inquests when someone dies under questionable circumstances. Senate Bill 1370 aims to create more opportunities for counties to use medical examiners, doctors trained specifically in conducting autopsies. And this week, the Senate Committee on Criminal Justice passed the measure onto the full Senate, one step closer to becoming law. Testimony was short, with no one speaking against SB 1370 during the committee hearing. Speaking in support was a forensic pathologist who serves in one of the 14 Texas counties with the medical examiner.
The best service that you're going to get for your citizens and for the families of the decedents is to have a physician investigate the death. And the compassion of every society is measured by how they treat their dead. So we need to be respectful of the decedents, and we need to be able to properly certify their deaths.
The legislation would lower the population threshold, legally requiring counties to establish a medical examiner office from 2.5 million to just 1 million, meaning the state's growth could force more counties to take that action sooner. There have been cost concerns with such a requirement, so the bill also allows neighboring counties to establish a medical examiner district, sharing costs and resources and a medical examiner, a unique opportunity that only exists today in a 4-county region in North Texas.
Ensuring more counties are equipped to handle critical death investigations in a timely, consistent manner. The bill also clarifies that any 2 or more counties, regardless of size, can form a medical examiner's district. This allows counties to share costs, personnel, and expertise, which is especially important for meeting increasing forensic needs without duplicating services.
The bill received unanimous approval from committee members who were present in the hearing, and perhaps one reason it had such solid support is because 3 of the 7 members on the committee have strong ties to the topic, each living within that existing medical examiner district in North Texas, including Senator Brent Hagenbu, who you just heard lay out the bill, and Senator Tan Parker, one of the bill's 2 authors. Just 6 months since we first questioned Senator Parker on this topic, and a month since he filed the bill following our investigation, it now goes to the full Senate for a vote, a major move forward in the legislative process. But on the House side of the Capitol, there's also movement, as an identical companion bill was also filed this month and now awaits its own committee assignment. At the Capitol, Josh Hinkle, KXAN Investigates.
David, it's always so interesting to me during session to see who comes out and gives testimony for or against something. Tell us the layout of who came to speak for this bill.
So sometimes you can glean a lot of things from who shows up or maybe who doesn't show up. In this case, it was pretty sparsely attended for this bill. The one guy who spoke on it was Dr. Pastilnik, who is the Fort Bend County Chief Medical Examiner, and he was speaking in favor of it. I talked with him after the meeting, and he explained that he helped draft the measure with Parker's office, Tam Parker, Republican out of Flower Mound. But there wasn't anyone else talking on it. And so there wasn't really any opposition, at least publicly. And there was just one guy speaking in favor of it. And I think that goes to show that even though this is an issue that does affect millions of people's lives, it sort of flies under the radar from most people.
And what's been interesting to me about the reporting across the board, as you all have been working on this series, is it's an issue that a lot of justices of the peace have a seemingly similar opinion on, that this is a lot on their workload and takes up a lot of their time. Can you talk to us about what they've said as you all have been reporting on this?
I think the responses are mixed. A lot of justices of the peace say that they're well positioned and knowledgeable and able to do this job. But in some of the growing counties near us, like Williamson County, we found that the justices of the peace felt like they were being pretty taxed by this death investigation, part of their job on top of all their legal duties and other things that they were doing. And so in Williamson County, we saw that they asked for, and the commissioner's court approved, hundreds of thousands of dollars to hire additional death investigators that would they're professionals that could help assist the justices of the peace with these calls that they would have to go out on and make determinations. Williamson County's also purchased land recently, I believe, or has land set aside that they're going to use or planning to use for their own medical examiner office in the future. So there's different feelings on it from justices of the peace, but there are some that we've heard from that say this is a tough job, especially in a growing county with a lot of people, and they need assistance.
Right. And, you know, this bill, if it does passes, it would have a pretty significant impact. And I just wonder, are there lots of medical examiners waiting in the wings that could, if this bill passes, that would be ready to take on these roles? What would that actually look like?
So there's a few things there. One is that the bill wouldn't immediately have a drastic impact on a lot of counties. There's not a whole lot of counties that are close to, well, there's very few that are close to the 2.5 million population mark. If they lowered it to 1 million, to where if a county reaches 1 million people, they would have to create a medical examiner's office. There are very few counties that are close to that right now. So that's one thing. To answer your question, no, there are not a lot of medical examiners in the United States generally. There's sort of it's a well-known issue that there's a lack of medical examiners. I've spoken with medical examiners in Texas and across the country, and they've explained that it's a very highly specialized physician position specialty. They're medical doctors. It takes a lot of training, and in the hierarchy of physicians or medical doctors, they're on the lower end of the pay scale. They make good money, but they're for the amount of training they have, so they're not making as much as other doctors are. So it's kind of tough to recruit, I guess. And so that's something they're working on. So, like, for example, if the state said, like, right now we want every county to have a medical examiner's office, not only would that be financially, like, not feasible, but there's also not enough medical examiners in the United States of America to handle that. So that is, theoretically an issue. Staffing is. The other thing that comes up when we're talking about this with people is that it is a financial difference between a justice of the peace office and a medical examiner's office. Like I said, they're staffed by physicians, highly trained people, and it's more expensive. So that's another consideration.
Was there discussion around that at this hearing around how they would tackle that? Well, it seems like a very large challenge. Did they talk about that at all?
No, not really. One thing that they did bring up, though, is that this bill clarifies that counties can enter into a medical examiner district. And so there's one of those in the state, and it's the bill's author, Tim Parker, in Flower Mound, up in the Dallas area district, Dallas area. There is a medical examiner district. That's the only one. And it's based in Tarrant County, where there's a medical examiner. And that basically gives the bill clarifies to give counties that have borders with each other the opportunity to partner up and basically use a pool resources to use one medical examiner's office to service multiple areas. And so that is another way to kind of bridge the gap between needing medical examiners and the staffing and financial issue, and then the justice of the peace that they currently have.
Well, David, I know you've got a busy day. I know you're listening to more hearings later on today. So I have one last question and then I'll let you go. What's next? We know now it's been voted out of committee and it's going to go to the Senate floor. What will that look like?
That's right. So it'll go to the Senate floor. And if it gets passed from there, the House will later on need to approve their version of it or get the bill passed. It'll have to go to the other side of the Capitol, and then it could become law. So it's still got a bunch of steps left. I looked online, and the companion bill in the House hasn't budged. So it looks like this Senate bill by Tam Parker will be the one that's going to do the heavy lifting for it.
David, thank you so much. For those of you who are listening or watching, we appreciate you. Don't forget to join us next Friday at 10:30 for Inside the Investigation. And you can also listen to KXAN's investigative podcast. It's highlighting some of our award-winning team's latest reports exposing corruption, safety concerns, and system failures across Texas. The podcast will feature audio versions of our weekly Inside the Investigation discussion, like this one with David, and also with all of our journalists who are working on these stories. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.